Hello and welcome back to another episode on the Sell Like You podcast. And today we are with the wonderful Claire, and we are here for the Women in Tech Sales segment, which we're very excited to have you here, Claire. Now, Claire and I, we've known each other for quite some time, and the sales industry, in tech industry, especially in Perth, is very small. And so we have remained connected for quite some time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're very
Very
welcome.
excited to be here.
Yes, I know. And you have been in the industry for a long time, Claire. So tell us a little bit about your entrance into the industry, which is always very interesting. So I'm keen to hear your story. I don't think I know it yet.
I love telling this story now because as I add the years on, I'm like, I think I'm getting old when I start saying, well, it's now been 18 years. So my history is actually quite interesting, especially because what I studied at university has absolutely nothing to do with the job that I do today. So through high school, I'm going to go back that far. Hopefully that's okay, but I'll keep it quick.
You go as far back as you need to.
I always wanted to be a pilot. So when I was 12, I got taken up into the cockpit of a plane when I was traveling as an unaccompanied minor to Australia to go and visit my auntie and uncle. And I thought, my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. This is what I want to do. I want to fly planes. So all through high school, I focused on science and maths and all of those good things. I finished school and I went into Massey University in New Zealand, in Auckland, and I studied aviation. So I did a 4-year degree, which was a Bachelor of Aviation, got my commercial pilot's license, was off flying all around New Zealand for a couple of years, finished that, and then decided that was really boring because I don't get to talk to people. And you've known me for long enough to know that I really like to talk to people. So I finished that. I'd been a poor student through university and I ended up just going, right, I need a job. I want to earn some money. I want to stop eating 2-minute noodles for breakfast. So I ended up landing a job in a call center for an IT distributor at the time called Tech Pacific. They later got bought out by Ingram Micro. You probably know who they are. So over the course of 2 years in Auckland, I got promoted in that job, I think 2 or 3 times. So out of the call center into an inside sales account management role, and then eventually into an outbound account management role. So fast forward, so that was 2005. I moved to Perth, Australia, and started working for another distributor called Express Data at the time, since being bought out by Dicker Data. And again, just really found myself, just finding my feet and succeeding in the role, and ended up becoming the sales manager for Western Australia, for the Perth branch there. Then after that, came across to Semantic. So this is when Craig Scroggy was running Semantic for Australia and New Zealand. So I ran the channel bet business for Semantic for 3 years over here. And then one morning, and this was Craig had left Semantic, started Next DC, joined as the CEO, and he came over to Perth and had breakfast with me. And he said, so we're building this data center. I know that this cloud thing is going to be huge. I don't have any partners. The data center's not finished yet. So how about you come and join? So at that time, Next DC honestly was still a startup. So I was faced with this decision of leaving the security of a big vendor and paid health insurance and all of those amazing things to come to this kind of unknown entity other than Craig, who is the most inspirational, passionate, smart person you could ever meet. So I rang him back the next day and I said, let's do it. So that was 10 and a bit years ago, and the rest is history. And I'm still here today, kind of riding the wave. And my remit here is just really grown in that time over the years. And I now look after from Perth, Adelaide, Darwin, and Queensland.
Wow. What? I did not know that about you, about the pilot.
I could tell by your face when I was telling you. You were like, oh my God, I don't think I knew that. Yeah.
I was like, I'm really good at asking lots of questions, and I didn't know that. And I was like, that makes me, I need to be better at that. Questions, I find out all the information. Wow, how amazing. And again, I think it's so interesting because, obviously you and I both, industry, both in Perth as well, both moved from other locations to be in Perth. And I find it very interesting. There's always a story. I've not met I'm yet to meet somebody that's gone, I'm going to be in tech sales and that's what I'm going to go and do. And that's what I'm going to learn. And that's how I'm going to get into the industry. And I definitely see more people coming into the industry to get into the tech industry, but not necessarily in tech sales. And I think it's so interesting to show that there is often a different path that has been taken or that we take, and that it often results in, very similar stories, but actually it takes different pathways and different, I guess, really levers to get where we are today.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely right, because I think, when I look back and when you're 17, like as a person, you don't really know yourself all that well. And so you'll have these ideas about what it is that you maybe want to do. And then I think what I've found through sales is exactly that. It's not as if I sort of stood there at that age and went, oh, I think I want a career in sales. But I started talking to customers, helping to solve problems, building relationships, and discovered that that's actually what I'm good at, and that's where I draw energy from, and that's what I really enjoy. So it's not so much that, you're sort of putting the flag out saying it's got to be sales or it's got to be tech sales, but it's more about kind of leaning into what you feel are your strengths and what you just enjoy doing, what you enjoy spending your time doing. You've got to love what you do. You spend a lot of time doing it.
We sure do, especially in tech sales. We certainly do spend a lot of time doing it. We can laugh. It's a long day, for sure. And interesting there. Obviously, I mean, I'm, for anybody listening, for definitely go and check out Craig, because he is an incredible person. But again, obviously your journey has come through, meeting these inspirational people. But what inspired you to get into tech? Like, obviously you start off in that call center, but what inspired you to keep going? Because call centers are tough. So, what kind of got you on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess the tech part of it, and what I love the most about tech is it not one day, not 1 week, not 1 year is ever the same. It's so rapidly evolving. And when I think back to when I was first working in that call center, and now I'm going to sound old as I am. And we used to get orders through the fax machine. And that's really only 20 years ago. And then when we think to where we are today with, things like generative AI really just taking off, it sort of feels like we've gone through so much change in 20 years, but yet we're just at the beginning. So it's never the same. It's rapidly evolving. And then I think the sales part of that, it really just came from building relationships, because when we would get those calls into the call center, it would often be, the same partners that were calling in. And so you would get to know them, and then they would call you and ask for you by name. And you sort of thought, oh, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy someone knowing they can come to me and I can help them out. And it sort of just grew from there.
Yeah, interesting. And so what got you, obviously you worked with Craig at Symantec previously, but was there anybody that you think was really influential prior to that got you into, that really cemented your learning, your desire to stay in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been honestly so many over the years. I can remember the first person. His name was Gary. He was the managing director of Tech Pacific at the time. And I still can remember being offered the account manager role. I remember standing in front of him in his office and him telling me that you've got the role and it pays $44,000 a year. And I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this much money after being a poor student? So, yeah, so he was really, really influential. And then when I moved to Australia, Jeff, who was actually my manager at Symantec, works for NextDC today. He's actually our CIO. He moved out of sales and into IT, and to this day I'm still trying to get him back into sales, but he keeps saying no. So he was really, really amazing. And then honestly, there's a long list, but Craig, I think, is just at the top of that list for so many reasons, because not only has he inspired me, but he's believed in me. He's kind of backed me the whole way, and he's pushed me into leadership roles where maybe even I didn't feel that I was ready. And so he's believed in me even at a time where I didn't believe in myself. And that's probably another really important part of the story to share, is what I love even more than selling is managing a team. That's really where I've found my place at work is the people management side of it. I love it. It's my passion.
Yeah, interesting. Now, in terms of that passion, obviously that takes a unique skill set to combine with sales, because like often, the mistakes that we see in the industry and in other industries, but predominantly in sales, is that you get somebody that's worked their way up, they've become the top salesperson, they're like, now you're the sales manager. And that, in my opinion, doesn't always work, generally doesn't work, because they are your biggest revenue generator. Why would you take them off the floor? But they're also not people, they haven't got the right people skills, haven't got the right leadership or the right development. So for you, what do you think it took to go from sales driven by yourself to go out there and do it, versus then being a people, creating that team, that mentality, and to help other people do what you've done?
It's such a good point. And by the way, I agree with you 100%. And I think in my journey, there's been lots of parts to that lesson. The first one was the first time that I did it, which was when I became the sales manager at Express Data. I was a terrible manager. I wasn't good at it. I didn't know how to make the step from, like you said, being the best salesperson in the team to being a manager. There were people in my team at the time that were friends. I wasn't able to sort of, build boundaries between friendships and having staff members. So I really learned a lot from just being bad at it the first time, and kind of coming back to it a few years later with, I guess, just a little bit more maturity under my belt, and realizing that as a sales manager, it's not about being on the field. It's not about promoting yourself. It's actually about empowering your people to be the best versions of themselves. And coaching and managing are just such different things. It's not about telling them what to do. It's about really getting them to a place where they feel like they know what to do, but that you're here to support them. And I think, honestly, that's just come with, training and time and mentoring, but just honestly, I feel mostly just time and experience. I've just got better at it over the years. And look, it's not perfect. I never am. I'll still sometimes do things and I just think, oh, I just don't feel like I handled that in the right way. And that's okay, because it's about, having the awareness around that and using it as a learning opportunity for next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that learning opportunity that we get so much opportunity to review on in sales. And I always like to say, you either win or you learn. And, there's always so much emphasis on the deal that you lost, or the pipeline size that you were hoping to achieve. But actually, we learn so much more from the no's, the objections, the ghosting, the challenge, opportunities. Like I very rarely celebrate many wins along the journey. It's something that I'm certainly trying to get better at.
You should.
But when we look but when we look at the ones that have taken me 2 years to get over, they're the ones that I'm like, I'm going for a wine. That's taken me it's taken me 2 years to get to this point. Never ever give up. But it's always those ones that we really can then reflect upon. And I think of every conversation, every training, every enablement, every presentation, there's always something. It's never going to be perfect, but there's always something. And I feel as salespeople, as good salespeople, and as I would say aware salespeople, we can always reflect quite openly on ourselves. And I think that that's a really good trait that I wish more salespeople had, to say, actually, that wasn't great, but you know what? This is what I've learned, and I'm going to take that with me next time.
And I could talk about this topic all day, because so much of that comes down to even things like how you recruit, right, in a team. So what I look for now in people in my team is not the person that knows the most about data center, or I think, is the most capable of selling. Sure, they need to have all of those skills, but I hire for culture. I hire for people that align with my values, and that actually just want to work and operate as a part of a team. Because I think when you sort of create those expectations at the outset, then you're in a much better position to be able to do that. And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you think you've got the right person and then you quickly realize, well, you haven't. And you've also got to be able to learn from those decisions and mistakes as well.
Awesome. So I'll ask you a different question. So from your journey into tech sales, and there's so many people now that are looking at tech as a career. Again, we mentioned that before, that it's not necessarily tech sales, but for somebody that has been recommended to go into technical sales or is looking at it, you mentioned before about you hire around, not about the tech. but about the culture and the right fit. But for somebody that's looking or maybe listening to this thinking, I'd love to get into that industry, what would be your piece of advice for them coming in?
Yeah, I actually get asked this a lot because there are people even internally within Next DC that will sort of come up and talk to me and ask me about sales and ask how they get in. And look, I think ultimately there are probably a few routes to sort of getting into, I think, a sales role or a sales career. And it just so happens that in my current role, I also look after a team of what's called sales development representatives. So they're a team that really work at sort of the start of the sales cycle, if you like. So inbound lead qualification, a little bit of prospecting and cold calling, a bit more junior so far as their sales experience goes. But that, that role in particular is just such a good way, in my view, to get into sales because it's challenging. They are often the first person that a customer or a prospect will speak with. But it's also a role where when we look at bringing people in, we really are looking for those, young, ambitious, curious, eager to learn, and they're looking to build a pathway into sales. So when I look at that team, I have to make sure I'm right about this. Yeah, none of them had really experience in tech sales before going into that role. And they will all, if we keep them on at Next DC, have a pathway into the sales team from there. So that's just one example. I'm sure there are others, but that's a really, really good one. And when someone comes to me, that will always be, hey, go and talk to that team, go and understand what it is that they do, how they got into their role, and start there.
Yeah, awesome. And so from a development perspective, learning perspective, how have you developed? Like, how have you learned over the years? Is there any books, podcasts, people? Obviously other than Craig, we can absolutely reference Craig in the notes. But, is there anybody else or anything else or resources that we can reference here that will enable people to go away and have a look and do their own research?
So many books. I probably couldn't. No, there's a couple that I will rattle off. So, Good to Great by Jim Collins. My dad sent me a copy of it in the post from New Zealand, I think about 5 years ago. And just some of those concepts, like just particularly around leadership and about leading from the front and just being a leader that's really, disarming and is seen as a part of the team. Like, I feel like I've really taken on like one of those as a core value. There's another book that I read earlier this year called Rebel Ideas, and that is an exceptional book about diversity. And I love diversity as a topic because I think, we've done a really good job focusing on, particularly in IT, and as a woman in IT and for you as well, upping the things like gender diversity. But this book really looks into cultural diversity, religious diversity, and how do you really foster, a team that has diversity of thought. Because if I go into a team and everybody thinks the same as I do, we just don't get anywhere. We need to have people with different perspectives and different thoughts and different ideas. So those would just be a couple of books that come to my mind. But look, ultimately, it's about having a plan. So inside Next DC, we have what's called a PDP, Professional Development Plan. It's up to me to have that plan. I own that plan. Nobody's forcing me to do that plan. Do I update it as often as I should? Definitely not. But I just think, everybody's accountable and responsible for their own development. And it's a great idea to have goals. And I know this is music to your ears, Harriet, because I know you're very goal orientated as well. And that's what's got you to where you are. The other thing I've done more recently, which has been really good, has been some coaching. So I've done some executive coaching with a coach, and working with her has really helped me to be a better coach, because what I've realized through coaching is we're not on these calls with her telling me things. What she's actually doing is asking me really, really good questions. When I think back through our calls, so I've been able to take some of that on with my team. And when we're working through things, I'm just being more. I'm being more curious. I'm asking more questions. I'm trying to understand what's going on for them.
Yeah, there are definitely a few. I think it's interesting from the question side of things is that often it's very easy to give everybody the answers, especially when we've been doing it for so long. So, someone asks a question, you're like, do this. Someone asks a different question. Oh, hey, I've got a template for that. I've got an example for that. Try that. Whereas actually, if we turn the question back to them and say, okay, great question. What would let's just take your initial thought process on that. What would you do? How would you do it? And it then comes back and you end up having the opportunity to think for yourself based on what you already know deep down. And often the answer is within you. You just haven't given yourself a moment to think about it. And then the development comes as you learn and you immerse and you surround yourself with different people. And if you do get stuck, or if maybe the coach thinks there's a different way, then it's then saying that is a great way that will get you here. Have you also thought about this way? Because it might still get you to the same point, but it's just a different journey.
Yeah, exactly. And that the other really important part about that point is it's about getting the monkey off your back, right? So, as you scale up and your team grows, if you've got a team, it's sort of, like I'm a parent as well. And it's like when your children come to you, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? You just create a habit around it and it's not scalable. So you need to get the monkey off your back and, get the team thinking for themselves, get them upskilling. And also equally and importantly, know that you're there as a sounding board, you're there to support, you're there to escalate if things get stuck, but that exactly as you say, it has to start with them and their thought process.
Yeah. Do you think from a skills perspective then for somebody coming into the industry, obviously you had varied skills from being a pilot. And,
flying planes,
very relevant. Selling IT, same. When it comes to, the skill set, and again, you highlighted the fact that you like to solve problems, you like to build relationships, and you notice your energy around that. For somebody that, has some of those, wants or desires, or knows that they enjoy those types of interactions, what do you think would be the number one skill for somebody that's in that knows that lights them up to go away and hone or to develop further as part of a sales step?
Number one for me is active listening. Just listen actively. And I know you're giggling because you know when you meet with people and it's just so obvious to you that they're not listening to you, it's just so you just disengage straight away. So be interested, be curious, and practice active listening, because it sounds so one-on-one. It sounds like, well, that's easy. You just listen, but it's an active process. It's not passive. And for me, that means, like, before I jumped on this, I was like, I have to put my Teams on Do Not Disturb. I have to put my phone on silent because it will distract me. So yeah, listen actively, be interested, be curious, and ask questions. Seek to understand.
Yeah, great. That's great advice. And it's interesting with the active listening. I'm reading at the moment Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. Have you ever?
I love Simon Sinek. I need to send you a YouTube episode. No, but I've just been obsessively watching some of his YouTube things lately, so I have to send you some links.
Very good. Yes, definitely send me the links. But the book I'm really enjoying, because I've enjoyed his other books. And this one, and last night I was listening and I actually read it out to my partner because I was like, this is what you don't do. So he's not a very good active listener. Actually, I'm not going to say what I was about to say. I was saying, I don't think many men are, but actually a lot of men are. It just happens that my partner's not so active in the listening. And he can repeat back to me what it is that I've said. I was like, that's two very different things. And so when in the book, he talks about active listening and he talks about being and having your energy in the place that you are. And he gave the example of parents going to watch football, then play soccer, or, again, American version. And he said, parents that go but are buried in their emails doing work. And when someone cheers, they're like, wait, and away they go and then they go back to it. When the kid looks over, they're buried in their email. So therefore, nobody wins. The parent has got stuff to do. And if they could put all of their energy into finishing the job, whatever the thing is on their phone, then they would get that done quicker. And then they could then be present at the soccer game, whatever. And then they translated that back into a work environment. Is that if we're having a conversation, but yet my phone's dinging, and every time we're having a conversation, I'm looking down at my phone, you don't feel engaged to me in any way, shape, or form. And my energy isn't here, and I'm not respecting your time. And so, again, I think it's really obviously very, very relevant at the moment. But I think it's something that doesn't matter how busy you are, doesn't matter who you're speaking to, be present, be in the moment, and listen, because you will learn
Yeah.
so much more. And that's, I guess, a top tip for someone that's new coming into the industry, or for anyone that's listening that is in the industry and wants to improve. Do that. And I reckon you'll see a huge difference within a few weeks.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you. And I think the other just such an important part of that is we're not always available, right? So there's no such thing as multitasking. So if somebody in my team comes to me and I'm buried in a spreadsheet or I'm doing something, rather than half-heartedly try and listen to what he's asking me, it will be, I'm really interested in what you have to say and I want to help, but I need to come and talk to you in 10 minutes. So it's also about setting boundaries and learning to say no. You would be the same. There's endless meeting requests. There's endless come to this event, come to that. We cannot say yes to everything.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, again, great examples there. Is there anything you want to share for somebody that is listening to this, that's thinking about getting in? Is there anything that you want to add to all of the wisdom that you've just shared or your experiences? Anything for them? Any key takeaways?
Oh, I just think that if you can't believe in yourself, find people that will believe in you on behalf of you, because imposter syndrome is real. I went and presented to a room of 800 people 2 weeks ago, and I used to be terrified of public speaking. Like, I mean, getting out of speeches in school, just the whole thing. And I can just remember standing there and sort of not 100% knowing if I believed that I could do what I was about to do, but knowing that everybody in the room had put me there because they did, and that was enough for me. So find people who are in your corner, and those are your people. Stick with them.
Yeah, amazing. Great piece of advice to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on my tech sales chat. And it was so great to understand, or I guess really share with others about your journey into the industry. I'll pop your LinkedIn on the notes as well. So if people want to reach out and connect with you, then they can do as well. You're doing great things in the industry, and I'm so glad that we connected all those years ago. But thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at the Christmas party next week.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.